TFA fam, what is going on? Hope you all advanced in your week 1 playoffs. It was an ugly week, one of the grossest weeks I can remember, even just outside of all the COVID stuff. That is neither here nor there. We are here to move on. We're not here to dwell. Looking at our week 16 waiver wire ads and streaming options. I am going to add the defensive streaming options at the end of this video. Kev, go ahead and kick us off with the quarterbacks that you're looking at in week 16.
Yeah, pretty short list here. I don't think there's any reason to get too deep in this. I mean, we are in week 16. A lot of teams are eliminated, so there's not many people options. But we're going to have to keep a really close eye on a lot of things in terms of COVID because we're seeing a lot of people being added again this week already. The Chiefs are dealing with it. So, hopefully that doesn't mean Patrick Mahomes, but we've already seen Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. They have 18 players right now in the COVID protocol. Now, that they could clear. This is really early in the week, so it's possible that, a lot of these guys are vaccinated, so a lot of these guys could come back. But as we've seen, even guys that are vaccinated have had trouble coming back in time. So we'll have to see on that. Cole Beasley was placed on the COVID restriction list. So, maybe he has a close contact with Josh Allen. I don't know. We'll have to see. So, some of these guys may be players that you should be looking to add, even if you're confident in your quarterback, just in case something happens. But Justin Fields, only rostered in 26% of leagues, gets Seattle this week, completed 26 of 39 for 285 and 1 touchdown, as well as 35 rushing on 7 carries. Seattle's allowed the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks, ranked 29th in pass DVOA. So this is a really great matchup. Justin Fields has also averaged 63 rushing yards per game over his last 4. I mean, just that rushing upside alone, that's like a touchdown a game that he's giving you on the ground. So he's a pretty safe play, and with his ability on the ground as well, I just think he has a pretty decent floor too. So love Justin Fields at only 26%. Next up is Big Ben. I don't love this, but he's only rostered in 25% of leagues. It is a road game against Kansas City. 16 of 25 passes for 140 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and their win against the Titans. But the Chiefs have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. It could be without multiple defenders. Like I said, 18 players now in the COVID protocol, and Big Ben has scored 19 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. So we'll have to see. Like I said, this is going to be something to monitor. But the Chiefs already a couple of their corners are on this list as well that they very likely could be missing. They missed Chris Jones last week, so we'll see if he can make it back because he was out last week with COVID. So a lot of moving parts here with this Kansas City, and there's probably going to be more. It continues to say it's an absolute mess over in Kansas City, and they likely could be losing a lot more than just this. And who knows, maybe we're looking at another game that gets moved. From there, you have Jimmy Garoppolo, rostered in 40% of leagues. He's really hard to trust because if they can get any sort of lead, they're just going to run the clock and run the ball. But he completed 18 of 23 for 235 and a score. This is, like I said, kind of a thin play, but the Titans have struggled to stop the pass. They allow the 9th most fantasy points and rank 14th in pass DVOA on the season. And Jimmy Garoppolo has had a few decent weeks here and there. But the weapons are there. But like I said, if they can run the football, they're going to run the football. So those are kind of the 3 quarterbacks I would be really looking at playing this week. And hopefully we don't get a bunch more news with COVID. But it just seems like the way this week has already started, we're going to get a lot more players that are going to hit this COVID list.
Yeah, absolutely something to pay attention to. A couple guys here for running backs as we transition. Obviously, the priority ad for this week is going to be Ronald Jones with Leonard Fournette looking like it's likely he's going to be put on IR, so his regular season seems to be over. Tampa Bay is adding Le'Veon Bell to the roster, but I'm not overly excited about that. I mean, he looked pretty dusty at his time in Baltimore. So this should be the Ronald Jones show, but it also does seem like Bruce Arians semi-hates Ronald Jones as well. So if you are looking to add Le'Veon Bell, I guess you can do it speculatively. I don't think that I would not be starting Le'Veon Bell this week. Let's put it that way. So if you kind of have that last spot on your roster kind of just to cycle through and you want to add him in hopes of, Rojo doesn't end up being the guy and Le'Veon Bell can kind of get a 1A kind of role in week 17, go ahead. But I'm not overly excited about Le'Veon Bell, and I would not be looking too far forward and putting yourself in the championship. But obviously, Ronald Jones, like I said, the priority ad for this week. Some other secondary ads that you can look at. Justin Jackson. Now, it is the news with Austin Eckler. It's kind of odd. Seemed like there was a couple beat reports coming out that he was going to be added to the COVID list. I haven't really been able to find anything. The only thing I saw was that he potentially tested positive, but because of the new guidelines that the NFL is putting in with COVID, that there are certain thresholds that players have to reach. So since Austin Eckler is vaccinated, he might not have had a test over the amount that he has to sit out. So definitely worth monitoring. But Justin Jackson would be the guy that I would be looking at if Austin Eckler were to miss. Duke Johnson, just an absolute. I leave it to, I think it was Duke Johnson's only 100-yard rushing game as well, and that's him coming off of the street. We thought we were going to get Myles Gaskin back in this game. We kind of did. He did see 10 carries for 54 yards, I believe, but Duke was the one who handled the majority of the touches. If you pick him up this week, do not start him. Going up against New Orleans this week, not a great matchup at all. So if you're picking him up again, this is almost like a look-ahead spot going up against Tennessee in Week 17. So if you want to pick him up, go ahead. I would almost rather just kind of leave him hanging out there and let your opponent pick him up and play him, because I have no idea what to expect out of that rotation. I don't know if Duke Johnson ends up being the guy for him, but if he does, we saw some juice out of him, forcing missed tackles and all of that. So someone to grab, but I'm not playing him. Same way with Le'Veon Bell. The other name here, Amir Abdullah. Not a terribly high ceiling here, much more viable in full PPR leagues. But Abdullah actually led the Panthers running backs in snap share in Week 15. Only had one fewer opportunity than Chuba Hubbard did. And now they're going to be going up against the Buccaneers this week. The game script should have them, abandoning the run earlier in this game. And as stingy as the Bucs have been on the ground, they have given up the 4th most catches and 12th most yards to running backs through the air. So I think Amir Abdullah makes for an interesting kind of dart throw play here if you are that desperate. And then just some other, handcuff kind of guys to add. And these are why we've been talking about adding Ronald Jones for the past 3 or 4 weeks, and that way you're not rushing out to waivers to try and beat everybody else. And especially if you have a system where it just goes, from worst record to best, and you're not dealing with a fab system. But anyway, Khalil Herbert, Jordan Howard, Dearness Johnson, Latavius Murray, and Devontae Booker are names you can look at for some handcuffs and some stashes.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I will agree with you. The Austin Eckler thing is super weird. Because I think even Adam Schefter on the halftime show of the Monday night game had said that they had placed him on the COVID list, but then, but there's been nowhere that's confirmed that at all. So it's just kind of a really weird situation. So I think it's just going to have to be something we monitor and see what happens. But other than that, yeah, I agree. I think it's a pretty thin week in terms of running back ads. I don't think there's a lot of people that really stand out tremendously. I guess the other one would be Samaje Perine if Joe Mixon were to miss any time because of the ankle injury. But, it sounds like Joe Mixon dodged a bullet there, and he should be available to play. But Samaje Perine, I think, would be the other one that I would at least take a look at just in the event that, Joe Mixon were to miss any time. But I believe they get Baltimore this week. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So, other than that, let's jump over to wide receivers. And we're going to start things off. Some of these guys, I'm surprised they're even rostered this much. I'm assuming some of these guys are probably gone in your leagues dread because, Gabe Davis was a huge guy to pick up this ad, but he's still only rostered 44% of leagues. So I did want to throw him on here. Last week, 5 receptions on 7 targets for 85 yards, 2 touchdowns, 25.5 PPR points. I think he was the number 4 overall scoring wide receiver on the week. He has 4 touchdowns over his last 3 games. Also, Cole Beasley was just placed on the COVID, and he is out for Week 16 because he is unvaccinated. He was, stood that ground of being unvaccinated all year, and now he is out at minimum the next 10 days. So he is 100% out for Week 16. No shot of coming back for Cole Beasley. So with them already being down Emmanuel Sanders, in this matchup against the Patriots, Gabe Davis does make a lot of sense here. He's got to see a ton of targets in this game, especially without Cole Beasley in this offense. Emmanuel Sanders obviously not there. So I would assume that J.C. Jackson has spent a lot of time on Stephon Diggs, where that leaves a lot of one-on-ones for Gabe Davis. So love Gabe Davis. If he happens to be out there, he is an absolute must-add. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown. 30%. I get he plays for the Lions, but the man is averaging 21.2 PPR points over the last 3 games, 35 targets over his last 3 games, 26 receptions, 249 yards, and 2 tutties. But I do have to mention that Jared Goff was placed on the COVID-19 list, but he, like everybody else, does have a chance to return. But as of right now, Jared Goff may not play in this game, so that is something to monitor. I don't know how much that would actually affect, because, I mean, it's not like Jared Goff is just some stud quarterback. So losing Jared Goff, I don't think is some massive downgrade to the next guy. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, if he's out there, he absolutely needs to be out. And then Russell Gage, what are we doing? 3 weeks in a row. Here we are again, 50% roster, 8 receptions on 11 targets for 91 yards and a touchdown, 23.1 PPR points. So if any of these 3 guys are out there, they're absolute must-adds, and they're all really great plays this week. So let me jump over to the rest of the list. I kind of shortened it down here a little bit. Listen, MBS was placed on COVID list, so now we have Allen Lazard who steps in, likely the number 2 wide receiver here for Green Bay. You know, an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, so he's only rostered 9% of leagues. I think if MBS misses, I think he would make a really solid wide receiver 3. They are still missing Randall Cobb, so this would be a really short and thin wide receiver room. Now, I have Tyler Johnson and I have Rashad Perriman on here. Listen, if it sounds like Mike Evans may be able to play this week with that hamstring injury that he has, we know Chris Godwin is out. AB may be returning, but if it's just AB that they get back, who's supposed to be on a snap count, Tyler Johnson is an absolute smash play with all these guys that are going to be out. He likely probably plays the same role that Chris Godwin did in that offense. So Tyler Johnson becomes a really strong wide receiver 3. Now I have the Chiefs guys on here as well. I probably could have put McCole Hardman also on this list, but right now Tyreek and Travis Kelce are both on the COVID list, so they are missing the 2 top pass catchers here. And so I do think Byron Pringle is the number 1 here. He is going to be the guy who's going to see the most targets. He has been the guy really over the last 2 months of the season. He's just gotten more and more involved in this offense. He has been kind of the wide receiver 2, but so much of the targets go to Tyreek and Travis Kelce that has kind of made them where, he is not as sexy of a play. But now, I mean, he really could see 10-plus targets here against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you have Josh Gordon, who was out last week with COVID, but he should be back this week. And then he also would be a guy who gets a major bump as well. He was already playing about 40% of the snaps. I think you would see him probably jump into the 70% range and really earn that money of why they brought him here. And then, some of the other guys that are on here, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think is a viable option against Green Bay, who they play Saturday night. I assume Jarvis Landry, a lot of these guys from the Browns should be back by then, but we'll see. And then Josh Reynolds, Rashad Bateman, Traquan Smith, Laviska Shenault, all kind of flex options at best, heading into this week. But really the main focus are the 3 guys that I already talked about, and then Allen Lazard, Tyler Johnson, the Chiefs wide receivers, which I would rank them Byron Pringle, Josh Gordon, and McCole Hardman. I know people are going to think, why is McCole Hardman not on the list, or why is he not higher? It's just because they have no trust in that guy whatsoever. He continually runs the wrong routes. He continually makes bad decisions on this offense. That is why he has never taken off. He has actually lost playing time as the season went on, and he does not play for nearly as much. I could see him being used on short intermediate routes here in this offense without Tyreek, without Travis Kelce, but I would not expect some huge workload from McCole Hardman.
We tried telling everybody at the beginning of the year, Kev. We tried telling them. Let's move it on over to the tight ends, and I do have some defensive streamers here at the end as well. Tyler Conklin kicking things off here. I know he's been a little disappointing over the past couple of weeks, but they do get a matchup against the Rams where they should be forced to throw more often than they have been. So he's back on the streaming radar. Hunter Henry feels a little point chasey here after his 2-touchdown performance last week, but he has been absolutely dominating snaps and routes run over Jonnu Smith. Hunter Henry is sitting at 67.6% snap share to Smith's sub 50% mark. I think he's at like 48 something. And Hunter Henry has ran 324 routes to Smith's 126. So if you need another streaming option, Hunter Henry is not a bad place to look. Cole Kmet has been jumping ahead, especially with Allen Robinson, disappearing, them being injured, them being on the COVID list. But he led the Bears in targets, catches, yards against the Vikings last week. Now they go up against a Seattle defense, giving up the 7th most catches, 12th most yards, and the 4th most touchdowns to the position. And then last one here, Ricky Seals-Jones, matchup against the Cowboys. They're currently 10.5-point dogs, and the Cowboys have given up the 11th most yards to tight end. So he is another option here if none of the other guys are available. And then really quickly here, the defensive streams. If you have, if you have the Chargers available to you, they are sitting in 50% roster in Yahoo leagues, only 16% in ESPN. They do get a matchup against the Texans. They are 9.5-point road favorites. I know Davis Mills has actually been playing pretty well recently, but you got to like the Chargers in this spot here. Next up would be the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to get a matchup against the Giants. Danny Dimes has been shut down for the year with that neck injury that he has. So we're looking at either Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm under center. Either way, it's a really nice spot for the Eagles defense. They are currently 10-point home favorites. There's only a total of 42.5 points here. So they are in a really nice spot as well. If those top two options aren't available, you need something a little bit deeper. I think Las Vegas is in an interesting spot with Teddy Bridgewater presumably out. Going to be looking at Drew Lock, and in his limited showings, he has not looked great this year. And as long as the Raiders can limit the damage that Denver does on the ground, I think they should be able to get, a couple sacks here, potentially a turnover or two with Drew Lock at the helm. And if that wasn't gross enough for you, and for whatever reason they aren't available, pay attention. Kev was talking about Jared Goff hitting the COVID list. It could be Tim Boyle time once again. So the Falcons could be a deep, deep desperation play here if none of those other options are available for you to stream in Week 16. Kev, anything else to say?
Please let Week 16 be better. I know it's not starting off great, but please let it just be better than what this last week was. This was the weirdest week ever. And like I said, it wasn't even because of COVID. I mean, we saw a lot of studs do absolutely. I mean, Tom Brady scored 4? Something like that, 4 fantasy. I mean, there's a lot of these players that we've been counting on all year that just cost people the week, right? And then you see these teams that either you had the 3 Chiefs guys, you either had Mahomes, Kelsey, or hit Travis Tyreek, right? Or I guess Cooper Kupp belongs in that conversation. But, those guys, other than that, you probably had a really rough week. A lot of really low scoring. So I hope Week 16 is better. And right now, it's not trending in that direction because we already have so many players being placed on COVID again. And we're only into Tuesday. So anyways, I think that's really right. I will say, too, the one thing I will mention with Ronald Jones, while I still think he's a really solid ad, what would worry me the most is his non-usage in the passing game. Because even last week when Leonard Fournette went down, they refused to use him in the passing game. They gave Keyshawn Vaughn that role, and Keyshawn Vaughn looked absolutely dreadful, right? And they still would not. So I would not be surprised if Le'Veon Bell ends up being the pass. That he just does all the pass catching work, and Ronald Jones only gets the between the tackles work. Which that's just how much Bruce Arians hates Ronald Jones.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely not the best situation, but in desperate times call for desperate measures, and this is one of them. So any other questions you guys have, please jump into the Discord. Link is in the description, or you can just drop your comments and questions here on the YouTube channel. We do have our rankings coming out for you guys tomorrow, and we will be live tomorrow as well, leading into the holiday weekend. So stick with us. Let's get another dub this week. Good luck to everybody, and we'll talk to you all soon.